Hey everybody, Rhadamant here. Thanks for tuning in to episode 3 of Kerbal Space Program. So, this episode, I have something very special to do with all of you. I am going to attempt to land on the closest moon, the Mud. So this will involve a whole lot of sort of fly-by-wire science. Normally you would have maneuvers and things like that all set up to make it far less of a guessing game, but I don't care. I'm gonna attempt to do it without any of that high-tech assistance stuff. So I am setting up a pod that will return back. Let's call this RHD5. That is what we're on now. So this is my return pod here. What else do we need? We have a bunch of science stuff in there. And maybe I'll add batteries as well. Add a little charge, spice it up. Okay, that all looks good. The bottom of here will be a heat shield. And this is what's going to land back on Kerbal when my mission is done. So now to do the rest of the ship. So here I'm going to add a fuel tank, and below the fuel tank a Terrier engine, and on this stage I'm going to put landing struts. This is what's going to land on the Mud. Yep. I'm actually going to angle the landing struts out this way. Alright. And then we're going to use a concept called Asparagus staging. So I'm going to have 2 of these radial decouplers and another 2. And we are going to have these things on different stages. So let me adjust my staging right now. Perfect. And add fuel tanks to them. I'm trying to do it as symmetrically as possible. There we go. Fuel tanks. Above the fuel tanks, we're going to have some aerodynamic nose cones so we don't cause extra drag. And then below these, we're going to have more Terrier engines. So the concept behind here is asparagus. So with asparagus staging, we are going to pull fuel from... We're going to have all 5 engines on, but pull fuel from 2 tanks at once. So the first 2 tanks to be jettisoned are these 2. This one and the one on the opposite side. So I'm going to have this Terrier engine draw fuel from this tank, and then likewise, we are going to eventually jettison the other side tanks. So the way this works, the way asparagus staging works, is these 2 will jettison first after the fuel tanks are empty. Then these 2 will jettison after the fuel tanks are empty, and this one will be the last. So let me show you how this works on the runway. Of course, this isn't our full craft. I'm just demonstrating asparagus staging to you all, because I'm nice like that. So the way it will work is something like this. As you can see, we're fired up, and these tanks on the side, because of these fuel tubes, these fuel pumps, only this fuel tank is being drained, right? And then as soon as this fuel tank empties out, we will jettison it off. And that way, the asparagus staging advantage is that we're using all 5 engines, but we're losing weight. So when this empties out, we get to jettison off those side rockets, and what remains is 3 full tanks with Terrier engines all ready to go. And all of this dead weight is gone. That is the advantage of asparagus staging. And then, of course, in this stage, these side rockets are draining. This one's not. When these are empty, boom, they're gone. And then what's left is this center rocket until, you know, it's empty. And then when it's empty, we are re-entering Kerbal. So let me revert that flight now that I've demonstrated asparagus staging. So what these little fuel pumps are saying is fuel from here goes to here, fuel from here goes to here. And it's mirrored on the other side. So that is asparagus staging in a nutshell. Later on, when we have more parts and stuff like that, you can make really interesting and large asparagus staged stuff. Alright, so instead of adding radial decoupler, or decouplers on the bottom there, what I'm going to do is then 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Trying to very symmetrically build the rest of the rocket. So now we have radial decouplers, and as you can imagine, we will add solid fuel. And I'm trying to do this straight on. Yep. You got to be very careful as to keeping everything radially symmetrical. Because if it's not, you're going to run into some problems. So that is pretty symmetrical, I'd have to say. Looks pretty good. All of these are going to fire up together. Oops. Let's fix some of the staging here. The solid fuel is going to go first, and then the mini rockets. So all of the solid fuel radial decouplers will jettison. Alright. And let's go down. I did actually have some tips worth sharing. One included how to show delta V within the VAB, which is the button I just clicked down there. But I will load up my list of suggestions and tips. So if I show all here, here is my thrust to weight ratio. So if I limit the fuel or the thrust to 45 for all of these, it should have an above 1 thrust to weight ratio, keeping in mind that these aren't going to be fired up at vacuum. They're going to be fired up after an earlier stage depletes. So now they have a thrust to weight ratio of 1.06. That's good. Okay. So Eric Agnell and Braden Anderson both mentioned that you can access it through these Delta V tools. At the tops of these, so that these don't produce drag, adding some nose cones. And then let's make sure that... oh, that's bugged. Let's make sure that they don't separate by just adding some strutting, which should reduce wobble. Doesn't need to be perfect. Struts, very, very, very handy. Okay, so now my total delta V is probably not entirely correct there because there's a lot of different stages. And then, of course, the asparagus staging is... one of the asparagus stages is grouped up with the rest of these. Let's figure out where that is. Or is it? Yeah, it must be. There they are. Alright. Much better. And then, as you can see, my delta V has changed significantly because I fixed that. Now let's raise this up a little bit. We are closing in on our mass max, but not our part count. So I'm not that worried about adding additional parts. Now at the bottom of all these rockets, all these solid fuel stage, I am going to add thumpers again. Now once we have the SRBs, that are higher tech and stronger than these, this craziness won't be needed. Now as you can see, I'm slightly over my mass max here, so what I'm going to do is ditch a little bit of solid fuel. Let's ditch down to 738. Let's see if 738 will do it. Lowering our mass enough. No, we're still over mass. Okay, so down to a little bit more. Yep, and now we are within mass for the launch pad that we have. Good. then additionally, we will strut these up together so that they limit wobble. This is a very hacked together ship. I'm sure there's better ways to do this, but you know, whatever. We're going to the Mun, so it doesn't really matter. And then in this stage here, let's show all. We can lower the thrust down to maybe 80%. Until we get a thrust to weight ratio that we like. I kind of wish I could just click in there and type it in. Alright, so our thrust to weight ratio is 1.17, and that will have to do. Let's see. Dotting my I's, crossing my T's. Trying to think, is there anything else that I've forgotten? Let's check the stages now. So we have solid fuel, and then we eject the bottom solid fuel to more solid fuel, then we eject the sides to my Terrier engines, then we do the Asparagus stages, and then we're good. Okay. I like it. Let's attempt to get to the Mun. Now before we do that, let's leave the VAB. I want to take any contracts that are relevant. So explore the Mun would be relevant here. And that's probably it, unfortunately. Now, they did pay me a nice big advance. So the ship that I want to launch cost me about 43K. Patch Conics would be very, very nice, but that's okay. We won't have that. Flight planning? Yeah, I'm going to get flight planning. Alright, let's go ahead and launch. Launching my vessel. Flight planning will make this trip a little bit nicer. Alright, ready for liftoff. And let's go. So what flight planning allows you to do is, I can't do it right now, but here is the extraordinarily slow takeoff. I'm not going to get a lot of elevation for the solid thumpers that I have going on right now, but they're just helping us to build up a little bit of speed, build up a little bit of altitude. As you can see here, my delta V is around 4,000-ish. And it's going to go up higher and higher and higher as we gain elevation, because our engines are going to be more efficient at elevation. It's a delta V of about almost 5,000 now. The ship is listing a little bit, and exactly the wrong way, listing to 270. I'm going to actually activate my center engine so that I can steer a little bit better, because I would like not to be angling the wrong way. And yes, this will cost some fuel later on, but it's worth it. Angling towards 90 to create an orbit. Oh, let's activate this again for a little bit more control. Eventually, we'll have inline stability and all sorts of nicer, higher tech, especially... Whoa, 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 whoa. I activated another engine rather than shut down the original one, and that really threw us off. A fly-by-wire operation here. Now, my delta V is about 6.2K. And let's take a look. My apoapsis is still not orbitable, but we're getting there. Come on, get up into space. Alright, so here's this phase. Hope I don't have to burn too much fuel here. Go ahead and angle the ship a little bit nicer. I have a lot of control now that I don't have these giant ungimbalable engines. Okay, so flight planning. Trying to circularize that orbit a bit, as I described how to do last episode. And our Terrier engines are a lot... Oh, there we go. Now we're in space. They're a lot more efficient in space. So now that we're in space, let's go and have them full blast. And we are just attempting to circularize this bad boy. We're getting space music now. Looking good. Not much to see here. Just 5 little Terrier engines taking me to the mun. At this point, I'm going to wait a teeny bit to get closer to the apoapsis. I fast-forwarded time just a teeny bit. And where is the mun? Here it is. Now I'm going to have to eyeball the transfer. The Hellman transfer, I think it's called. I am not, of course, the most scientific guy there is. I don't work for NASA or any of that, so... Just an average gamer, man. I'm not going to have the right terms for everything. Alright, so those engines I should have jettisoned a long time ago because they've depleted. And my periaps, once it hits about 70k, there we go. I am totally orbiting now. Now I have to eyeball the transfer to the moon. Or mun, as it is. So I think right around here, I'm going to have my transfer burn. So the way I'm eyeballing it, when we start to burn, we're going to build our apo out, right? And we want the apoapsis to intercept the mun. Normally I would highly suggest when you attempt this to have the tracking station upgraded so that you can have patched conics. Which allows you to actually do some calculations, like crunch the math. Right now, I'm just sort of like steering mostly blindly, which is super, super inefficient. And I'm not actually all that experienced enough to say that I'm going to make this my first shot. But I can try. I can always try. I'm going to wait a little bit later. There we go. So what we're trying to do is we're expanding our orbit to intercept the moon. So the moon is traveling this way, and we're going to be traveling that way. And we need to intercept it the best we can. Now, as I said, eventually I will have much higher tech ways of doing this, but for now, we're just going to eyeball it. Totally eyeballing. Now, luckily, the moon has the same orbital plane as Kerbal, whereas Minmus, the other moon, does not. As you can see, it is at an angle, which adds a slightly increased level of complexity. Not that much, but a bit. All right, and when my apoapsis gets out to the... There we go. Roughly the moon's orbit. We'll cut. I don't know if I'm actually going to do an intercept here. This is just a guess, and it could go wrong. It looks like I'm going to get there too soon. Maybe? No, it looks... Wow, it looks really good. Oh my goodness. Okay, so now what we have to do is to not slam into the moon. So as you can see, we are doing a transfer here. And at the moment, I'm going to hit the moon at 460 meters per second. And as we get closer, that number will accelerate. Nice. An eyeball in it for the win. So the best way to do this is a suicide burn. I don't know if you know how to calculate suicide burns in vanilla Kerbal Space Program. Let me know. I'm not sure how to do this, but before I get any closer, I'm going to do an atmospheric scan of high orbit because I can. Because it will yield novel information. So here we go. Doing the EVA report as well, because we can have multiple EVA reports. And now that we have done that, yeah, let's get a little bit closer. So what I'm going to do is cut my horizontal velocity. So see this right there, this on the nav ball determines the sort of the way I'm falling. And I want to center that over the top of the nav ball by blasting this way. I know this is like Zug caveman know how firework good. But that's just the best I can explain it. And what this is doing is cutting all of the horizontal velocity we had. So as you can see, instead of arcing, we're sort of coming straight down. And the reason I'm doing that is I'm aiming for this crater that's below us. So now instead of coming in, like sliding in, whoa, I might have accelerated. No, I think we're good. I tried to accelerate time a bit. So I'm just angling it so they're coming straight down again. Centering it over the top of the nav ball. As you can see, it's almost a perfectly vertical approach. And because I'm really bad and don't know how to do the suicide burns, I'm just going to slow down a lot of my descent now. And we're almost ready to ditch these side rockets here. So yeah, if you guys know how to calculate suicide burns in vanilla Kerbal Space Program, let me know. I'd love to know how. I know that MechJeb and Kerbal Engineer Redux and other mods do it for you, but I'm really interested in vanilla at the moment. So if we had a probe right now, we have no signal from a satellite, and we would not be able to control the ship if this was not a manned flight. So at this point, make sure that you have your telemetry set to above ground, not above water. And we are getting really close to landing here. So I'm gonna cut my speed to below 9, ideally less. And gentle, gentle, gentle all the way down. These side tanks just about empty. Now the one tank I'm gonna have left is enough to get me home. Alright, there we go. We're on the Mun. So my Explore the Mun contract is done. And before I do anything else, I'm actually gonna go back to the Space Center and make sure there's no other additional contracts for me to pick up. Because we've hit the milestone of hitting the Mun. So here we go. Science data from the surface of the Mun. I can do that right now. And that's the only other contract being offered. I think if I take the decline hit on a few of these. Yeah, plant flag on the Mun. There we go. That was worth me taking a hit. Now we have 2 new missions that we can hammer out right now. So let's go ahead and control our RHD-5, our Mun lander, that we did as a sort of a blind landing. Now, if you're new or new-ish to Kerbal Space Program, don't do what I just did. Don't eyeball it. I eyeballed my way here, and it takes a lot of hours to be able to do that. It will be very frustrating to do with it. Ideally, you want to take contracts until you have enough for better parts and you know, patched conics and planned maneuvers and all that stuff. And we'll get that. We'll get there eventually. All right, so that's all the science in my science bay. Let's close that baby up. Little crew report. Little EVA report. This is Mun's northwest crater. We're gonna let go, and then plant a flag. Now we can't collect soil samples because we don't have the necessary science built R&D upgrade. All right, we'll name the flag Mun's northwest crater. My first Mun landing will be the plaque text. Let's go ahead and jump around. Ooh, look at that low gravity. Okay. And now let's go home. If I can, you know. All right, boarding. Get rid of the side engines, which will remain as debris forever sitting on the Mun. Alright, let's start angling to 90. That actually might not be most efficient. I should know this by now, but we are facing... Yeah, okay, we'll just do it like this. And we're going to make this apoapsis climb until we are leaving Mun's influence. With my teeny little rocket here. Alright, let's really make it climb. Get back to the sphere of influence of Kerbal. Okay, that's probably enough. Let's accelerate time. And there we go. There is proof that our sphere of influence is now Kerbal. And I'm getting like a bunch of firsts, you know, escaping the sphere of influence, or the escape velocity of the Mun counts as something. Now, given how much fuel I have left, yeah, I'm not going to worry too much about landing directly back on KSP. I'm just going to start cutting my orbit so that my periaps is... well, if I have enough fuel left to get to KSP, maybe I'll try. But right now I'm going to cut my periaps to be really, really, really close to re-entry. Because it would suck to be stuck in orbit. Okay, so it's already beyond re-entry now. And we'll accelerate time. I don't want to accelerate too much. Am I out of... No, I'm not out of electric charge. I'm just accelerating time. Okay, we are on the very opposite side of the world from KSP. So what I'm going to do is go back into orbit so we're not actually landing. And we'll see how much I can circularize right now. But I'm not going to use up the last of my fuel. I'm going to keep an eye on that. So here's my fuel gauge. So I want to leave enough fuel to actually land. Or to deorbit. This is a point of contention. In real life, a lot of countries will leave satellites up into orbit, but not have enough fuel to actually deorbit them. So they just become sort of like junk. Dangerous, dangerous junk. Alright, I am going to now lower my periaps and come in for a re-entry. And hopefully that gets us somewhat closer to KSC, to the Kerbal Space Center. Sort of, not great, obviously. But better than just random. If I had more fuel, I would have feathered it better or whatever, but I'm mostly concerned about getting this science home and not to get funds returned. Alright, let's get rid of that. And now for the re-entry burn. We are now in the atmosphere of Kerbal. And let's go ahead and turn on the beautiful thermodynamic display here. The ablator is starting to work already. Please don't burn up. Please don't burn up. Please don't burn up. I mean, it looks pretty cool, right? Just a little pod going for a burn. I have enough power to keep the pod nice and centered. We have a very sort of gentle aero brake, which means it slows our speed down a lot, but it also cooks us a lot. Needless to say, some butterflies in my stomach. I never like the fiery re-entry. I might, if I am going to farm science off of Min, Miss, and Mun, I might end up over-engineering my ships so that I can actually engine brake. But here we go. We are sort of close. Oh, no, we're not that close to KSC, but whatever. We're alive. That's what matters. All right, let's pop our chute. And make sure not to accelerate time to the point where the chute rips, because that would suck. So this chute is going to deploy at 1,000. So we'll accelerate time down to about 2 and some change. All right, there we go. Chute pop. It would suck to get all the way to the moon and then die, like right now, wouldn't it? But nope. The chute deployed. It slowed our descent down. My engine that I separated from definitely just exploded somewhere nearby. And we are... gentle splashdown. And let's recover the vessel before it even, swishes around in the ocean. Alright, so that's going to yield a lot of science. It yielded 378 science. So I have 452 total. We have a 67% return. Not terrible. Jebediah leveled up because he got to the Mun. And that's all the time I have for this episode, guys. So I hope you appreciated this sort of blind Mun run. If you have any tips, tricks, ideas for me, drop me a line. If you know anything about aerobrake calculations in vanilla Kerbal Space Program or suicide burn calculations in vanilla Kerbal Space Program that doesn't involve me using a compass and a tablet and a pen and paper, drop me a line, and I do hope that you tune in next time. Thank you all for watching. Adios.